Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And today, I hope our show can help offer hope and help to those who feel that anxiety is unmanageable, and particularly in their lives. My guest today is Elke Scholz, a registered psychotherapist and author of Anxiety Warrior. Elke, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you, Janine.
So, as a psychotherapist, tell me about your role as a psychotherapist and a little bit about your background.
Well, I have a master's in psychotherapy and expressive arts. I also have a third certification in EMDR, so it's an international certification. And so I do a lot of work with trauma, first responders. I also work with people with anxiety and generally coaching. And I also manage my own anxiety. So thus the fascination with anxiety and producing books on anxiety.
So as a psychotherapist, I know that education is mostly clinical. Where do you work primarily?
Well, I have a private practice in Bracebridge in Muskoka. So I'm about 2 hours north of Toronto.
Wonderful. So how are you doing with this COVID pandemic? Has it affected you personally?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm just human like everyone else.
Yeah.
And what has happened too is, of course, people coming in are bringing, their issues, and it's been exacerbated with what's going on. So it's like this extra sack of potatoes on top of them. And the therapy's been more intense. Seeing a lot more heightened and exacerbated symptoms for sure.
Yes, as you say, this pandemic has produced a lot of anxiety in the population. So has that increased your therapy visits with patients who are in the community, or are you seeing an increased need for therapy as it relates to the pandemic and all that it brings?
Yes. Yes, to both questions. Absolutely. And of course, you asked me too how it affects me. And I'm very fortunate. I have a separate building for psychotherapy. I live on 6 acres. So I have a very idyllic place that rejuvenates me, and I need to do a lot. I noticed I've needed to do a lot more self-care and stay positive and to be able to support my clients.
So define for me, what is anxiety? How do you define it?
Well, that's a great question because we all have anxiety as a human. It's part of our human spectrum, and it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's a clue that we need to pay attention to something. However, it comes in so many different ways, and it comes physically, cognitively, behaviorally, emotionally. So we are seeing, we may see the typical symptoms of the butterflies in the stomach, or the shaking, or the restlessness, or the, finger tension. However, there's also, it comes in lack of concentration or intrusive thoughts. Behavior-wise, it could be, drinking or self-harming. It also could be a lot of feelings of dread and worry. So anxiety shows up many different ways. And, some people have asked, is it different than stress? And I don't think so. I think which one comes first? I think you look at the symptoms, and that's what we try to calm down.
So when does it become unhealthy? And
Well,
what?
it becomes
And can
yeah,
you? And can you? Let me say, can you actually tell when the unhealthy aspect of anxiety begins and really starts
yes.
for a person?
Yes, absolutely. So it becomes unhealthy when it stops us from living our lives. Perhaps it stops you from having that job interview. Perhaps it stops you from going shopping or stops you from going to a party or being with friends. I was just dealing with a client this morning, and the little one was disrupting the whole household. So then it's problematic is when it's disrupting a flow and a thriving of life.
So I'm hearing that your book, Anxiety Warrior, gives and empowers us readers to really go from a feeling of being a victim of their anxiety to really empowering us over, the circumstances that may make us anxious. So tell us some of these tools. What can you explain that?
Well, one of the first things that's important is to understand where anxiety comes from. So, and that's what's been confusing is sometimes, and I also manage my own anxiety. And, when you think you've figured out one aspect of it, then another one pops up and it feels a little bit different. So it's first understanding, where is that anxiety coming from? So is it coming from substances, something as simple as not drinking enough water? Is it, or perhaps too much caffeine? I mean, we can, talk about different ones there. Is it physical? Is it just reality? Do you have a lot on your plate that would make any of us anxious, even with strategies? Is it overstimulation? So understanding where this anxiety comes from. And so the book starts by talking about that. And then we talk about different kinds of anxiety. So just knowing where that fits in, where it's inhibiting you.
So might we probably describe these as triggers? And if it is that we do have these triggers that cause anxiety, should we write them down so we can identify them? What do we do when we know what the triggers are?
If you know what your triggers are, I already say you're lucky.
Yeah.
And you're ahead of the game, because some of the things is how, discovering what are the triggers. And sometimes we just don't know. And so that's what we do talk about is, is a trigger a social or cultural belief? Is it about having self-doubt? Is that a trigger? Is it a trigger if you feel you should or need to do something? Is it a trigger? Maybe if you know your trigger, you can stay away from it. Sometimes people do that. And if it's not stopping you from thriving, that's okay. Perhaps a trigger is a memory or a trauma. And if that's what's going on, you certainly do want to get some professional help.
Can someone gain mastery over these triggers where they may notice the trigger and be able to deter their mind away from the anxiety-producing trigger?
Absolutely. We can strengthen ourselves. We can empower ourselves. We can learn to recognize it and then use strategies to what we want to do is lower that intensity of the feeling. So yes, absolutely, we can learn to do that.
I'm going to get to how we deal with anxiety, but are there some body sensations that we may experience during our periods of anxiety that would be clues to a necessity for us to reduce the anxiety? I'm thinking maybe our heart palpitations or, something else that may be cues.
Well, a lot of times clients have had what they call panic attacks. And so, I ask them what that looks like for them. And a lot of that is increased heart rate or heart rate not calming down or actually having the pain in your chest. And of course, you do want to, if you're concerned about that, go to a hospital and check that out. It may show up as sweating or flushed cheeks. It could show up as weight loss or even weight gain. It could show up as insomnia. It also can show up as, teeth grinding or irritable bowel syndrome, shortness of breath, shaking, those kinds of things. So, yeah, and it's certainly, I describe it as really not a good feeling. It does not feel good. It's pretty difficult when it's in full blown. I would also call it short circuiting. It's really difficult to think or put a sentence together when you're feeling that heightened anxiety.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today we're trying to offer hope and help to those who feel that anxiety is an unmanageable part of their lives. My guest today is Elke Scholz, a registered psychotherapist and author of Anxiety Warrior. So I'm thinking in terms of all of these probably physiological things that can happen as a result of stress. How can we build confidence in managing anxiety? And what are some tools that we can use?
So imagine that we're a car and we have 4 tires. And each tire, one tire is mental, one tire is emotional, one tire is physical, another one is spiritual. Our optimum is that all these tires are inflated. So what we want to do is make sure that we're maintaining this vehicle. And if there's an aspect in our life that is not balanced, or perhaps we're not paying attention to, then we're going to be wobbly.
Yeah.
So what you want to do at the beginning is look at these 4 areas for yourself. And is there a way that you can make some improvements in these areas? And what happens, Janine, is a lot of times we're strong in one area. So you might find, when you do this, that your mental, maybe your job is very stimulating, very intellectual. So you'll be strong there. However, you haven't maybe looked after your physical or spiritual. And we tend to sometimes ignore that. We're a very cognitive society. So that's the first step.
So would you recommend stress reduction techniques? And can you list some stress reduction techniques that you have found helpful, that you have guided your patients with using?
The first, and yes and no. I would first, one of the things I talk about is awareness and practice. So the strategies are the practice part. However, the first thing we need to do is to be aware. We need to be aware, and each body is different. So a strategy that might work for you and I isn't going to work for a listener. So one of the what I'd like to give is the scale 0 to 10, and you can easily start paying attention and noticing where you are. So 0 is calm. So not necessarily happy, just calm. Your body's calm. Perhaps it's laying on a beach. Perhaps you're sitting in your garden. Perhaps you're just relaxing, calm. 10 is I can't put a thought together. I'm so agitated. Perhaps it's that panic attack. So what we want to do is be aware. And it's so interesting is when I guide you on something like that, is people will come back and go, wow, there are things that really calm me that I didn't know. And we need to be aware of, when we even just walk into, like right now, the sun is shining and everything's glistening, how does your body react to that? Does it, when you go to your pet, perhaps they do something cute.
Yeah.
Your body. So we want to pay attention to those things because that's what feeds us. That's what calms us down. We need to really just be aware so much with everything. And it sounds, at the beginning, it may sound like a big exercise. It's not. You get very used to checking in with your body, and it takes a millisecond when you've started to do this, and you just start noticing. And that's the first really strong strategy, is really pay attention to where you are. Then we can go into the strategies.
What I'm hearing is that the physical health is very associated with the mental health. Very associated.
Absolutely. Yep. And thank you for that. I'm not, I am not the typical therapist. And you're right. I go through right away. I talk about to people what they're eating. And I also, we talk in our first session about how they're sleeping. 2 bad nights of sleep, and we're all going to feel terrible. So we so rely on that rejuvenation. We so need good sleep, and we need to know what's going to help us sleep better. And that can come from very many different areas. And we talk about that. So, and that if you're going to take something away from today is, if you're not sleeping well, you really want to get that down first before you go to therapy and maybe your therapist or coach can help you, get that proper sleep and then notice how you're feeling. And that scale, you're going to notice that you're going to be on a pretty good level, for sure. And diet has, I found a diet has a lot to do with that and what we're eating, with how it affects our sleep.
So what should I be eating? How long should I be sleeping? And what should I be eating?
Well, one of the things, and we need a lot of sleep, actually. I don't have it all at the tip of my tongue, but you and I, we probably want to have 7 to 8 hours good sleep.
That sounds good.
And we want to feel rested. And sometimes I wake up really early, and if I'm awake, I get up. I have a lot of energy. I sleep really, really well. And I'm like a bear protecting my sleep. I really do. So, we want to make sure we feel rested. And children, they need a lot of sleep. They need 9-10 hours. And if they're not getting that, they're not going to learn very well. They're going to be prone to anxiety. Teenagers need even more. So we do as humans need a lot of sleep, and we do need that rest, and you want to have that good rest. That's so, so important.
And eating, you would suggest, I guess, I don't know if you're for a plant-based diet, or what are you thinking in terms of eating?
Well, and here we're all different. So what I do ask about the diet is more what is stimulating. And so, and each body is different. My brother, he can have chocolate cake, have a coffee, and he'll fall asleep at the table. Me, if I even smell chocolate cake at 4:00, I'm going to be up.
Yeah.
So my body is very sensitive to sugars, very sensitive to caffeine, and it needs a long time to metabolize it. Yeah. So, what we need to do is we really need to know what our bodies are like. What is it that our body needs? And children, the same. And I just had a client a few weeks ago was sleeping well and said, you know what? And this was a trauma client, said, right now I'm not sleeping. And I said, okay. The first thing we looked at, I said, what are you having after supper? And he said, I'm having a peppermint tea and a freezy. So I went, okay. And so the interesting thing about diet is it's immediate. You don't have to, try things out for a week. So I said to him, peppermint tea has gotten me too. It's herbal, caffeine free. However, peppermint is a stimulant. So that peppermint tea was giving him a restless sleep. And then, of course, the freezy was full of sugar. And they said, you got to have your freezy another time, just not before bed. Well, it was immediate. As soon as he stopped those two things, he was back to sleeping well again. And so the clues are, if it's inconsistent. So if some nights you're sleeping well and other nights not, it's probably diet related. It could also be maybe, something exciting is happening in your life. That's a possibility, but if it's really inconsistent, a lot of times it's diet related. Alcohol is tricky because wine, a lot of people will have a glass of wine to relax. Well, you can go to sleep quite easily with wine. It will wake you up about 2 or 3 hours later. Your body then is revved with the sugar and your body thinks, okay, I've got all this energy. I'm not going to sleep.
Right. So, I mean, and I should throw exercise in there, I guess.
Yes,
where you
absolutely.
Good workout certainly helps. You sleep.
Absolutely. And it creates those great endorphins, which we need. And for sure, we do need that exercise. And for sure.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today we're trying to offer hope and help to those who feel that anxiety is an unmanageable part of their lives. My guest today is Elke Scholz, a registered psychotherapist and author of Anxiety Warrior. What about music? Would you say, I know that some music is very, it can really produce anxiety, certain types of music, but have you ever recommended music as a means to reduce stress and anxiety?
Well, that's a fun question because I've taught classes in college, and I personally like the soft classical kind of music to do artwork with. And I walked into a classroom and they were having heavy metal, bam, 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 stuff going on, and I'm a very curious person, so I just said, how can you concentrate to that? And the ones in the classroom said that they don't even hear it, that relaxes them. So again, it really is back to each body's different, and we all have different vibrations. We've all got different rhythms and body rhythms. It's just to get to know them, and they're not a right or wrong.
Right.
And so, obviously I couldn't sit in that classroom. They were doing their homework, so I just went somewhere else. But so what I do encourage people is really listen to your own body, listen to how your body feels. And you can take these suggestions. And one of the things I really emphasize too is I hear a lot of people say, oh, I shouldn't do this, or this is wrong, or I should listen to that, or I should do this. Or they call themselves dumb or whatever. And I just go, no, listen to your body. There's a reason your body's giving you these signals. You've been with your body 24/7, not me. So you want to explore those signals. Like your body knows. Your body knows every single time. You can rely on your body.
Your body knows when it's experiencing stress. Tell me something. What about those mental freezes? I know that we have and blocks. Is that stress? When you can't remember why you went upstairs, you're like, why did I even do this? Is that stress, or is that just me getting Alzheimer's or something?
No, and that's really funny because I've been like that since a kid. So no, that's not it. I see it coming from a very creative mind. So what happens is we're thinking, I've done that my whole life. I will walk down a hallway and go, okay, why am I here? Mm-hmm. No, I'm not doing it anymore often now that I'm here in my life. It's a sign of creativity for sure.
Okay.
Now that mental freeze that you talked about, that definitely is anxiety or stress related. And that's what I was talking about, that short circuiting, where we just can't think or we can't focus. Mm-hmm. That's different. Mm-hmm. And even, here's a fun little thing is if you feel you've lost something or misplaced something, and the more agitated we get, right? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? We're not going to find it because that stress will block our neuroreceptors there. So the more we can relax, and a lot of times if I can't find something, and if I can, I'll just do it before bedtime. I just go, okay, when I wake up in the morning, because I'm usually quite relaxed then, is tell me where it is and I'll find it. So our body doesn't forget. We have an innate intelligence. Our brain is hardwired to keep us alive, and we got to trust it. And we can also teach it things and give it strategies. So if it's using strategies that we don't like, we can talk to our brain and say, okay, I'm going to teach you a new strategy. And the brain will use it. So that's kind of cool too.
So you talked about exercise, you talked about diet, and you talked about how we can really eat well, sleep well, and all of these things to reduce stress. Anything else? How about our breathing? Are you a proponent for the way we breathe? Any other things that we can do?
Absolutely. And you reminded me because you did ask me that. And what I notice, and this again comes back to the scale, if we're at a 10, if you're at a 10 and you're out of your mind, whether you're enraged, whether you're having a panic attack, whether you're having this grief, this real heightened experience, the last thing you're going to be able to do is to breathe slower. So what we need to do is lower it slowly. And we need to come back into our minds. And so what I recommend is when we're having these really heightened, if you want to call it panic attacks, these heightened energetic feelings, try to be physical. So I recommend walking, and even the act of walking, that's when you can start regulating your breathing. And as we come down a little bit in those notches, that's when we can start introducing, okay, let's get that breath going. But at the very beginning, it's something that our brain is just going, nope, we're not going to do that. And we'll get angry. And that's why people do get angry. We'll say, well, can you just slow down and breathe? And they just about lose their mud. So you want to get them, let's just walk. Let's just take a walk. Mm-hmm. Let's just walk down the hallway. Let's just walk or outside. And as they get walking is then breathe with the walking for sure. And there's a lot of different breathing exercises in the book, though it's a gradual. And then once we get down, and I want to give some numbers, maybe a 5 or a 4, that's when we can really go, okay, now let's really, take a deep breath and, let that go. I hope that's helpful.
No, that's great. That's very helpful. How can we get more information about your book? Where can we find it?
Well, the best is we just designed a brand new website and we refreshed it. It's called anxietywarrior.ca. And I don't know if they can use this. Anxietywarrior.ca. Okay. Super easy to find and it's free. You don't have to sign up because I figure if you've got anxiety, the last thing you want is one more step. So there's lots of resources there. The book links are there. So they're in audio. They're also as ebook and hardbook, whatever you want. All that's there. Lots of free resources to help with anxiety.
Well, thank you so much for giving us ways to identify anxiety and ways that we can handle and manage anxiety. Thank you for being here, Elke Scholz, a registered psychotherapist and author of Anxiety Warrior. We hope you stay safe and continue to stay healthy. And thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you. My privilege. Thank you so much.
This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.